Fire Prevention Week commemorates the Great Chicago Fire, which burned in the city of Chicago from October 8th to the 10th in 1871. On the 40th anniversary in 1911, the Fire Marshals Association of North America sponsored the first Fire Prevention Day. In May 1919, at the National Fire Protection Agency's 23rd annual meeting, they passed a resolution urging governments in the United States and Canada to support the campaign for a common Fire Prevention Day. This was expanded to Fire Prevention Week in 1922. In 1920, President Woodrow Wilson issued the first National Fire Prevention Day proclamation. President Calvin Coolidge issued the first National Fire Prevention Week for October 4th to the 10th in 1925.
The Great Chicago Fire burned the city of Chicago from October 8th to the 10th in 1871. The fire is claimed to have started about 9:00 p.m. on October 8th in or around a small barn belonging to the O'Leary family that bordered the alley behind 137 DeKoven Street. There has been much speculation over the years as to what actually started the fire. The most popular tale blames Mrs. O'Leary's cow, who allegedly knocked over a lantern. In 1871, the Chicago Fire Department had 185 firefighters with just 17 horse-drawn steam pumpers to protect the entire city. The initial response by firefighters was quick, but due to an error by the watchman, Thaddeus Schaefer, the firefighters were sent to the wrong place, allowing the fire to grow unchecked. An alarm sent from the area near the fire also failed to register at the courthouse where the fire watchmen were located. When the firefighters finally arrived at DeKoven Street, the fire had grown and spread to neighboring buildings and was moving towards the central business district. Firefighters hoped the South Branch of the Chicago River, in an area had previously burnt thoroughly, would act as a natural firebreak. The fire spread was aided by the city's use of wood as the predominant building material in a style called balloon frame. More than two-thirds of the structures in Chicago were made entirely out of wood, with most of the houses and buildings being topped with highly flammable tar or shingles roof. All of the city's sidewalks and some roads were made of wood, compounding this problem. Chicago received only 1 inch of rain from July to October 9th, causing severe drought conditions before the fire, while strong southwest winds helped carry the flying embers towards the heart of the city. As the fire grew, the southwest wind intensified and became superheated, causing structures to catch fire from the heat and from burning debris blown by the wind. Around midnight, flaming debris landed on the roof of the South Side Gas Works. With the fire across the river and moving rapidly towards the heart of the city, panic set in. About this time, Mayor Roswell B. Mason sent messages to nearby towns asking for help. When the courthouse caught fire, he ordered the buildings evacuated and the prisoners jailed in the basement released.
At 2:30 a.m. on October 9th, the cupola of the courthouse collapsed, sending the great bell crashing down. Witnesses reported hearing the sound from a mile away. As more buildings succumbed to the flames, a major contributing factor to the fire spread was a meteorological phenomenon called a fire whirl. As superheated air rises, it comes into contact with cooler air and begins to spin, creating a tornado-like effect. These fire whirls are likely what drove flaming debris so high and so far. Such debris was blown across the main branch of the Chicago River to a railroad car carrying kerosene. The fire had jumped the river a second time and was now raging across the city's north side. Despite the fire spreading and growing rapidly, the city's firefighters continued to battle the blaze. A short time after the fire jumped the river, a burning piece of timber lodged in the roof of the city's waterworks. Within minutes, the interior of the building was engulfed in flames and the building was destroyed. With it, the city's main water mains went dry and was helpless. Finally, late into the evening of October 9th, it started to rain, and the fire had started to burn itself out. The fire had spread to the sparsely populated areas of the north side, having already consumed the densely populated areas thoroughly. Once the fire ended, the smoldering remains were still too hot for a survey of the damage to be completed for several days. Eventually, the city determined that the fire destroyed an area about 4 miles long and averaging 3/4 mile wide, encompassing an area of more than 2,000 acres. Destroyed were more than 73 miles of road, 120 miles of sidewalk, 2,000 lamp posts, 17,500 buildings, and $222 million in property, which was about a third of the city's valuation in 1871. Of the approximately 324,000 inhabitants of Chicago in 1871, 90,000 Chicago residents, 1 in 3 residents, were left homeless. 120 bodies were recovered, but the death toll may have been as high as 300. The county coroner speculated that an accurate count was impossible, as some victims may have drowned or had been incinerated, leaving no remains. On October 11, 1871, General Philip H. Sheridan came quickly to the aid of the city and was placed in charge by a proclamation.
The preservation of the good order and peace of the city is hereby entrusted to Lieutenant General P.H. Sheridan, U.S. Army.
To protect the city from looting and violence, the city was put under martial law for 2 weeks under General Sheridan's command structure with a mix of regular troops, militia troops, police, and a specialized organized 1st Regiment of Chicago Volunteers. Lieutenant Governor William Bross, and part owner of the Tribune, later recollected his response to the arrival of General Sheridan.
Never did deeper emotions of joy overcome me. Thank God, those most dear to me and the city are safe.
For 2 weeks, Sheridan's men patrolled the streets, guarded relief warehouses, and enforced other regulations. On October 24th, the troops were relieved of their duties and the volunteers mustered out of service. In the days and weeks following the fire, monetary donations flowed into Chicago from around the country, along with donations of food, clothing, and other goods. These donations came from individuals, cities, and corporations. New York City gave $450,000 along with clothing and provisions. St. Louis gave $300,000, and the Common Council of London gave 1,000 guineas, as well as 7,000 pounds from private donations. Milwaukee, along with other nearby cities, helped by sending firefighting equipment. Trains from all over the country brought in food, clothing, and books. Mayor Mason placed the Chicago Relief and Aid Society in charge of the city relief efforts. Operating from the First Congregational Church, city officials and aldermen began taking steps to preserve order in Chicago. Price gouging was a key concern, and in one ordinance, the city set the price of bread at 8 cents for a 12-ounce loaf. Many people who were left homeless after the incident were never able to get their normal lives back, since all their personal papers and belongings burned in the fire. The city's government improved building codes to stop the rapid spread of fire and rebuilt rapidly to those higher standards. The fire also led to questions about development in the United States. Due to Chicago's rapid expansion at the time, the fire led to Americans reflecting on industrialization. On the other hand, others believed that a lesson to be learned from the fire was that cities needed to improve their building techniques. Frederick Law Olmsted observed that poor building practices in Chicago were a problem. Olmsted also believed that with brick walls and disciplined firefighters and police, the deaths and damage caused would have been much less. Almost immediately, the city began to rewrite its fire standards, spurred by the efforts of leading insurance executives and fire prevention reformers such as Arthur C. Ducott. Chicago soon developed one of the country's leading firefighting forces. Business owners and land speculators such as Gurdon Saltonstall Hubbard quickly set about rebuilding the city. The first load of lumber for rebuilding was delivered the day the last burning building was extinguished. The Palmer House Hotel burned to the ground in the fire 13 days after its grand opening. Its developer Potter Palmer secured a loan and rebuilt the hotel to higher standards across the street from the original, proclaiming it to be the world's first fireproof building.
Almost from the moment the fire broke out, various theories about its cause began to circulate. The most popular enduring legend maintains that the fire began in the O'Leary barn as Mrs. O'Leary was milking her cow. The cow kicked over a lantern, or an oil lamp in some versions, setting fire to the barn. The O'Leary family denied this, stating that they were in bed before the fire started, but the stories of the cow began to spread across the city. Catherine O'Leary seemed the perfect scapegoat. She was poor, Irish Catholic immigrant. During the later half of the 19th century, anti-Irish sentiment was strong throughout the United States and in Chicago. As an Irish Catholic, Mrs. O'Leary was a target of both anti-Catholic and anti-Irish sentiment. This story was circulating in Chicago even before the flames had died out, and it was noted in the Chicago Tribune's first post-fire issue. In 1893, the reporter Michael Ahern retracted the cow and lantern story, admitting it was fabricated, but even his confession was unable to put the legend to rest. Although the O'Learys were never officially charged with starting the fire, the story became so ingrained in local lore that Chicago's City Council officially exonerated them and the cow in 1997. Anthony DeBarlo reported evidence in 2 articles by the Chicago Tribune suggesting that Lois M. Cohen may have started the fire during a craps game. According to Cohen, on the night of the fire, he was gambling in the O'Leary's barn with one of their sons, James Patrick O'Leary, and some other neighborhood boys. When Mrs. O'Leary came out to the barn to chase the gamblers away at around 9 p.m., they knocked over a lantern in their flight, although Cohen states that he paused long enough to scoop up the money. Following his death in 1942, Cohen bequeathed $35,000, which was assigned by his executors to the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. The bequest was given to the school on September 28, 1944. This argument is not universally accepted. Amateur historian Richard Bales has suggested the fire started with Daniel Pegleg Sullivan, who first reported the fire, ignited hay in the barn while trying to steal milk. Part of Bales' evidence includes an account by Sullivan, who claimed in an inquiry before the Fire Department of Chicago on November 25, 1871, that he saw the fire coming through the side of the barn and ran across to Coven Street to free the animals from the barn, one of which included a cow owned by Sullivan's mother. Bales' account does not have consensus. The Chicago Public Library staff criticized his account in their webpage on the fire. Despite this, the Chicago City Council was convinced of Bales' argument and stated that the actions of Sullivan on that day should be scrutinized after the O'Leary family was exonerated in 1997.
Hello, I'm Bill Simmons, President of the Indiana Fire Association. We hope you enjoyed our telling of the Great Chicago Fire as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. As the association moves through our 142nd year, we'd like to remind you that our fund drive is kicking off shortly. The Indiana Fire Association is all volunteer and has been since 1878, but it is through our partnership with you and your generous donations that we are able to keep operating to serve you. Community support makes it work. Thank you.